Tonight on Reporting Scotland, firefighters are offered a 20% pay rise over 4 years, but must take on new responsibilities. Record numbers of planned operations are cancelled because of a lack of beds, staff and equipment.
My surgeon came with a very, very frustrated face and he said, "I'm sorry, it's been cancelled."
Also on the programme, the Justice Secretary denies meddling in police matters and rejects calls for his resignation. The SFA decides it'll be a choice between Hampden or Murrayfield for future internationals and cup finals. And the Vikings are on the streets of Lerwick as Shetlanders prepare to celebrate the festival of Up Hellier. Good evening. Scotland's firefighters are to be offered a pay rise of up to 20% if they agree to take on new responsibilities. It's being described as a reward package for a new expanded role rather than a pay rise. As part of the deal, it's expected that between 200 and 300 jobs could be cut. Well, our news correspondent Lucy Adams joins me. So tell us more about the deal on offer, Lucy.
Well, as we understand this offer, which hasn't even gone to firefighters yet, would, as you say, be 20% over 4 years. Now, that wouldn't be for every firefighter. It would depend on the salary they're currently on and the types of allowances they receive as it stands, but it's up to 20%. Now, that would be for all firefighters once it goes forward. And next week, we know that the Fire Brigade Union in the UK and Scotland will be meeting to discuss this. Now, as you've said, the fire service don't want to call this a pay rise. They're talking about a reward, and they're talking about it in terms of their transformational change. So they're saying this would be taking on a new role for firefighters. So they'd be taking on counter-terrorism as well as their current role and emergency frontline medical services.
Any reason why this is happening now?
Well, last autumn, the BBC obtained management documents which talked about the need for transformational change. It said there was a suggestion that there might need to be fire service cuts to both firefighters and fire stations. And it said that the fire service was out of date and couldn't continue in its present state beyond this year. Now, their emphasis then was, as we said, on transformational change and the need to modernise, to take on new roles and new responsibilities. They don't want to talk about pay cuts and they don't want to talk about staff cuts either, because the expectation as part of this deal that there could be cuts of up to 200 or 300 firefighters. Now, as I've said, they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about transformational change. But this is going to be controversial given the context of the recent 1% pay cap on public sector pay. And I suspect that what people will take from this is that it is a pay rise and that this is staff cuts. But that will all be debated as these details come out. And firefighters haven't even yet got their letter.
Oh, Lucy, thank you very much for that breaking news there. A record number of planned operations have been cancelled this month due to non-clinical factors such as a lack of beds, staff and equipment. Figures obtained by the BBC reveal that 2 health boards, NHS Lothian and Greater Glasgow and Clyde, accounted for 60% of all operations cancelled for non-clinical reasons. The British Orthopaedic Association, which deals with hip and knee operations, says it is a massive mistake to ascribe it just to a winter crisis. Katrina Renton reports.
Rita Kumar is at home in Broxburn, waiting for an operation on her knee. She was due to have it on the 18th of December. She'd arrived early at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, where she was due to be seen first, and got ready for theatre.
Put me in a wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket. Then the anaesthetic came. She took all the detail, marked my leg. Then we waited and waited. 8:30 passed. About 2 minutes later, my surgeon came with a very, very frustrated face. And he said, "I'm sorry, it's been cancelled." My daughter did ask, "What happened?" He said, "We have no bed."
All Scotland's NHS boards, except for the Borders, provided us with figures. In a 3-week period of January this year, hospitals cancelled more than 1,200 operations for non-clinical reasons. Last year, 704 planned operations were cancelled for the whole of January. NHS Lothian cancelled the most operations by far at 423. Greater Glasgow and Clyde was next with 296, and 149 were cancelled in the Highlands. Some of the cancellations were in orthopaedics, like hip and knee operations, and this professor says it's not just the winter crisis, but also because of the pressures on beds.
It's absolutely kind of catastrophic at the moment. There's a massive number of patients who are in severe pain who can't have the treatment they need. It's a massive mistake to ascribe it just to the winter crisis. This was an issue before the winter, and it's been steadily increasing over the last 2 years. We've gone from an 18-week kind of time from treatment before patients are seen to approximately 2 years now for many patients, from when they're seen by their GP before they get the surgery they need.
NHS Lothian has apologised to Rita and other patients affected in their area, but said the decisions were made to ensure patient safety. Rita has had her operation rescheduled for Monday.
If it happens, okay. If not, then I'll just have to come back home again and in the same frustration what happened last time.
Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland, West Lothian.
The Labour Party has suspended the leader of its council group in South Lanarkshire, Davy McLaughlin, as part of an investigation into alleged Islamophobic remarks regarding the former Labour leader contender, Anas Sarwar. Well, this story has just broken in the last few minutes, and Brian Taylor is at Holyrood. Brian, what more can you tell us about this?
Let's reflect, Jackie, upon the background here. You'll recall, of course, that Anas Sarwar, a Glasgow MSP, contested the Labour leadership against the ultimate winner, Richard Leonard. Now, during that contest, Anas Sarwar disclosed yesterday that comments were made to him by what he described then as a senior Labour councillor, which Mr Sarwar, regarded as being potentially Islamophobic. Now, let's just remind ourselves of what Anas Sarwar said.
He didn't believe he could vote for me because, in his words, Scotland wouldn't vote for a brown Muslim Paki. That was obviously extremely hurtful to hear him say that. And when I challenged him back, he said he was engaging in pub banter.
Now, let's bear in mind that while Mr Sarwar regarded those remarks as being made to him, which he reported, as being completely unacceptable, he also said that the councillor had said to him that this was not his opinion, the councillor's opinion. It was the view potentially of his constituents, and that was why the councillor was saying that it was difficult to support Mr Sarwar. Well, what has happened tonight in the last few minutes is the Scottish Labour Party has suspended Davy McLaughlin, the group leader in South Lanarkshire, in relation to this potential controversy. And the statement simply from Labour says Davy McLaughlin has been suspended by the Labour Party pending an investigation.
Brian Taylor, thank you. Police watchdogs have confirmed they're investigating another misconduct complaint against the Chief Constable, Phil Gormley, who has denied wrongdoing. News of this investigation came as the Justice Secretary, Michael Matheson, rebuffed calls for his resignation over his handling of policing. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
A police chief under investigation. Phil Gormley's been on special leave since September, and complaints against him are piling up. The Police Investigations and Review Commissioner, or PERC, has confirmed it's now investigating 5 allegations of gross misconduct, all of which Mr Gormley denies. At the weekend, the PERC made headlines for a different reason, after it emerged a Scottish Government official suggested the Commissioner delay publication of a report. In her reply to Don McGilvray, Commissioner Kate Frame said, "My perception of your remarks is of government interference with my independence." At Holyrood, the Justice Secretary denied meddling, quoting subsequent remarks by the Commissioner.
There has been no instance of government interference, and the release of the document went ahead within the planned timescale. Did I have knowledge of the engagement between my official and the PERC? No, I had no knowledge. Did I ask them to make representation? No, I did not.
But that did not satisfy his opponents, who said he should resign.
The attempt to interfere and failing is morally no different from attempting to interfere and succeeding. Does the Minister accept that attempts to interfere in the independence of key public bodies such as the PERC is completely unacceptable?
He does not have the moral credibility to do his job. When will he do the honourable thing and resign?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I'll continue to do the honourable thing, and that is to do my job properly.
The Minister said he fully supports the independence of the Commissioner and plans to increase her budget by more than £1 million in the coming year to handle the growing number of complaints against Police Scotland's Chief Constable and other senior officers. Glenn Campbell reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
The First Minister says the leaking of a UK government paper on the economic impact of Brexit is a watershed moment in negotiations. Ministers in London are playing down the forecasts, which suggest the UK economy will grow more slowly outside the European Union. But the Scottish Government argues the case for a hard Brexit is now dead. Our political correspondent Nick Hardley reports.
This is about the economy, how much it grows and what that could mean for the pound in your pocket. But it's also about transparency, what the government publishes, and it's about the ongoing political debate on Brexit. Here's what the BuzzFeed leak says. If there's no deal and the UK reverts to World Trade Organisation rules, economic growth would be 8% lower than current forecasts. If there's a free trade deal, it'd be lower by 5%. Even if we stay in the single market, it would be 2% lower. No figure for the government's preferred option, a bespoke deal, has been produced. But summoned to the Commons this afternoon, the government said this hadn't been approved by ministers and was far from complete.
The article is a selective interpretation of a preliminary analysis. It is an attempt to undermine our exit from the European Union.
These are just forecasts. Forecasts have been wrong before, as Brexiteers have been keen to point out today. And there are political questions. Who leaked the information? Was it an attempt to force the Prime Minister's hand? But the figures are very similar to those released by the Scottish Government earlier this month. And ministers in Edinburgh think this should be a wake-up call.
I think it changes almost everything, because we've discovered not only that the UK government is not telling the truth, many will not be surprised by that, but we've discovered the real facts behind the damage that Brexit will do, which the government knows, and yet it wants to go ahead.
Leave-backing Conservatives say an economic hit isn't inevitable.
I don't believe we're going to take an economic hit. The papers that we've seen today are analysis of these off-the-shelf arrangements that people have already been talking about. They in no way take into account what the desired outcome of this government is, which is to achieve a deep and special relationship with the European Union.
So who's right? Labour say the analysis should now be published in full to help us make up our minds.
You have to start from an economic assessment about what the impacts are and what you're trying to mitigate through that negotiating process. Parliament has not been given that information.
Nobody can be sure exactly what will happen after Brexit, but there's still a sharp divide on what the future will look like. Nick Hardley reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Scotland has become the first part of the UK to legislate to make sure women make up half of all non-executive members on public boards. This new law was passed at Holyrood on the same day a report into the pay of on-screen talent at the BBC found there was no gender bias, but that the corporation's approach to setting pay in general was far from perfect. Rebecca Curran can tell us more.
Hi, nice to meet you. Paul met me in his lawyer's office. He wants his identity hidden. He's just been diagnosed with hepatitis C.
Eleanor Bradford was health correspondent at BBC Scotland for 15 years. She says she was paid significantly less than her peers. Her testimony has been submitted to a Westminster committee looking at the gender pay gap.
I was one of the longest serving correspondents at BBC Scotland. While I was there, I saw male specialists being appointed on starting salaries that were higher than mine.
So tell us, why do you think that you were paid less?
It's difficult to say. I think there's a lot of unconscious bias generally in decision making over pay. One of the reasons why I decided to let my name go into the public sphere is that I thought people should make up their own minds.
The BBC has faced accusations of gender bias. Since it emerged, the majority of its top-earning on-air staff were men. Today, a report found any disparity was unintentional, but the corporation was far from perfect when it comes to setting salaries.
If there are barriers for women progressing in the organisation, we can remove them. If there are things we can do to make it easier and better for women to progress in the organisation, then I want to do those things as well. All of this is underpinned by a belief in far greater transparency.
No, I think if you go into here.
Of course, this problem extends beyond the BBC. This company wants to see more women enrolling in its software development courses.
I've actually had coaching and mentoring about how to approach the problem, because in some cases when you come forward with, I'm not being paid as much as him or this, it becomes a him against me, and that's really not how we want to approach it.
Equality is one of these issues that you have to keep pressing on. It's about changing people's behaviour, it's about changing employers' practice. So we hope that this new law will start to change things further, but it's really the ball is in employers' court.
The row over BBC pay has thrown the spotlight on the gender pay gap, but a sign this evening that attitudes could be beginning to change. MSPs voted for at least 50% of members on public boards to be women. Rebecca Curran reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
It's almost exactly 6:45. A reminder now of tonight's top story. Firefighters are offered a 20% pay rise over 4 years, but must take on new responsibilities. And still to come, the Vikings are on the streets of Lerwick as Shetlanders celebrate the festival of Uphelia. It's to be a straight choice between the home of Scottish football and the home of Scottish rugby for future football internationals and cup finals. With the Scottish Football Association's lease on Hampden Park due to expire in a couple of years, the SFA board say they'll either stay at the National Stadium or move matches to Murrayfield. Well, we can get more now from our reporter David Curry, who is at Hampden for us tonight. This has come as a bit of a surprise, David.
Well, it was to me, Jackie. If I had to place a wager on the outcome of today's meeting, I would have thought that perhaps all three options on the table for where matches were going to be hosted in the future would be considered in greater detail. That's not the case. The Scottish FA board today has ruled out the option of playing international matches and cup finals beyond 2020 at either Celtic Park or Ibrox. That because they want a permanent home for the Scottish FA, either here at the historic home of Scottish football at Hampden, or indeed perhaps the culture shock of relocating to Edinburgh and the home of Scottish rugby at Murrayfield. The options that remain on the table are Hampden or Murrayfield, and that is because primarily due to cost, the SFA thinking it was just too expensive to be an itinerant body roaming around, if you like, from ground to ground. They want a permanent home in future. And today, after that meeting, they released this statement. Having considered all submissions and supporting documentation, the board has decided at this time to further develop two positive options: remaining at Hampden Park beyond 2020 and moving to BT Murrayfield. The decision was taken after considering the financial implications of all proposals submitted, with a view to final proposals being considered in the summer. So there we have it. It's head-to-head. It's Hampden versus Murrayfield to be the home of Scottish football beyond 2020.
Thank you very much for that update, David Curry, there at the National Stadium. More than 8 out of 10 rail passengers say they're satisfied with ScotRail. That's according to an independent survey. But there's growing concern at the number of trains that skip stops in order to stay on time and avoid penalties. Our transport correspondent David Henderson has more.
Getting to work and getting around. Last year there were almost 100 million train journeys in Scotland. So what did passengers make of the experience? Well, an independent survey suggests that ScotRail customers thought their service had improved over the year.
The underlying message is that it could be better if performance was better. If punctuality and reliability improved, overall satisfaction would improve.
The survey found more than 8 out of 10 rail passengers said they're satisfied with ScotRail services. That's down a bit compared with the spring. While Virgin Trains scored higher, with more than 9 out of 10 customers on the East and West Coast lines saying they're satisfied.
These survey results, mixed though they are, may come as a relief to ScotRail, who've been under intense pressure to improve their service. When engineering works were carried out across the network, they caused delays and cancellations and caused the mood among many passengers to plummet. Now though, rail users rate ScotRail services as better than the UK average.
But ScotRail's tactics are under fire. Most of the time, their trains stop where they're meant to. But it's emerged 20 services a day skip stops altogether so they can arrive on time at their destination and meet official targets. At Parliament today, questions were asked.
The impact on individuals on the train can be quite substantial if they've got children to pick up, elderly people, job interviews and so on.
The boss of ScotRail defends the move.
We only use skip stopping as a last resort when the control centre needs to return the service to the timetable. And it's true to say that during the autumn period we were using skip stopping rather more than we would like. It is only a handful of services out of the 2,200 services that we run each day.
The Green Party says ScotRail's tactics are a sign its contract with the government is flawed. Scottish ministers want to see it improve communications with passengers. David Henderson reporting Scotland.
Drowning is one of the main causes of accidental death in Scotland, claiming the lives of around 50 people each year. Well, now, for the first time, a drowning prevention strategy is to be published. Here's Stephen Godden.
Around Scotland's coasts, in its lochs and rivers, things going wrong on the water can be the cue for a dramatic rescue. But help doesn't always arrive in time. On average, every year, 50 families in Scotland lose a loved one to accidental drowning. Gillian Barclay's son Cameron died in 2014 after jumping into this quarry in Fife. Since then, 2 other people have died in the same place.
I really don't want any other family to go through what we've gone through in terms of losing Cameron. He was only 18, he had so much to live for, and it's affected all of us, and it will continue for the rest of our lives. So I am desperately hopeful that just by talking to school children and getting involved in water safety that I get a message across that has an impact.
Gillian's was an important voice in drawing up a national prevention strategy. A first for Scotland, where accidental drownings happen at twice the rate than the rest of the UK.
The figures show that in Scotland people are more likely to drown at the coast, and that in many cases accidents happen to people who had no intention of going in the water. Those most at risk are men in their 60s.
Asked why that is, Water Safety Scotland say they don't know. An important part of their strategy, which is also designed to reduce water-related suicide, is improving information gathering. In Glasgow this afternoon, progress in another area. Teaching children to swim forms part of the wider water safety message.
I mean, the last thing we want to say to people is not to go near water. We actively want to encourage people to use water for recreational use and commercially, but we want them to use it safely, to understand what those dangers will be when they visit an area and to make sure that they keep well out the road of them.
Success will take time to measure, but by 2026 the aim is to halve the number of people who drown by accident. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Shetland's Uphellia Viking Fire Festival is underway in Lerwick. It reaches its fiery climax this evening when over 900 torchbearers parade through the streets before burning their Viking longship. John Johnson has been following the preparations and the celebrations.
On the march, the latter-day Vikings blaze a trail through the streets of Lerwick.
The weather first thing was a bit wet, but it's dried up for us coming into the town centre. I've really enjoyed coming in with all the cheers at the local shops, and yeah, I'm feeling great.
Thousands of people, young and old, have been lining the streets to cheer them on.
I'm from Switzerland and I enjoy the festival because it's unique.
The amount of effort that's gone into this ship is quite extraordinary. So it seems a shame to burn it in a way.
We bought this in Orkney during the summer. We thought it would keep our ears warm if nothing else.
The warriors are helping bring alive Shetland's Viking past.
Yeah, I've been growing the beard now for about a year. Never grown one before, so it's been quite interesting. And I've had a bit of fun over the Christmas period, being one of kind of Santa's helpers.
I'm from Masterton, New Zealand, 33 degrees, coming to a chilly Shetland, but when the galley burns, I'm going to be warm tonight.
The festival, which celebrates the rebirth of the sun after a long winter, is a boost to local businesses. Lynette Smith runs a bed and breakfast in Lerwick.
All our rooms are full. We've got visitors from all over the world, America, Australia, Sweden, and it's really good having that business in the winter months.
was a real community effort too, making the costumes, painting the billhead, building the longship, and it wouldn't be a fire festival without the torches. Up Helia first started in the 1880s. Film taken back in 1927 shows just how much the festival has grown. The real spectacle takes place tonight. The skies above Lerwick will be ablaze with colour as a torchlight procession snakes its way through the streets of Lerwick. Then the carefully crafted longship will be consumed in a vast sea of flames. John Johnston, reporting Scotland, Shetland.
I fear they'll need the heat from that burning boat, Judith.
If the rain doesn't put it out. Thank you very much, Jackie. A very good evening to you. They say red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning, and that certainly was the case this morning, as with this weather front sweeping in across the country at the moment, bringing outbreaks of rain across much of Scotland. As that cold front clears away, the winds veer into the west, and they'll be strong, and they'll drive in plenty of showers. So here's that rain crossing the country as we speak, with a fresh to strong southwesterly wind. You can see the winds start to veer into the west. The rain clears and those showers start to pile in, and there'll be a wintry flavour to those showers as well. We are looking at snow over higher ground, some wet snow to lower levels as well, possibly even the odd rumble of thunder. By the end of the night, temperatures falling to around about the freezing mark, so there will be a risk of ice. There is a Met Office yellow be aware warning for both snow and ice tonight, so be aware of that, or tomorrow I should say. First thing tomorrow morning, difficult driving conditions at times because of that rain, sleet and snow. Icy stretches too, both underfoot and on untreated surfaces, so be aware of that first thing tomorrow. Difficult rush hour initially, frequent showers blowing in and those blustery winds strong across the country and reaching gale force towards western and northern coastal areas. Come the afternoon, we will continue to see those showers. They will fall as rain towards coastal areas, though, and a wintry flavour to them over the higher ground inland. But some brightness in between times. They'll blow through fairly quickly. They'll tend to come in clumps, though, so you'll see a good heavy one at times from prolonged, but then they'll push through and we'll see something brighter, falling as largely rain over the Northern Isles, but very windy with gales here. We'll see something drier and sunnier for eastern Aberdeenshire, Angus and the eastern borders. There'll be some shelter here, but feeling bitterly cold everywhere in those winds. And as we head towards dusk, those showers keep piling in, but then towards the evening time we see a gradual shift in the wind direction. There's a Met Office warning for snow and ice for northern Scotland tomorrow night. Frequent showers in the north, becoming drier in the south. We'll see a touch of frost as well. Now, as we're heading towards Thursday, the winds go into the north. This means plenty of wintry showers across northern Scotland. Very windy here. We're looking at severe gales for the Northern Isles. But in that wind direction, generally a lot of dry, sunny weather through the central lowlands, and in the south, a bitterly cold day. Then on Friday, a welcome bridge of high pressure, a quieter day, a dry day, plenty of sunshine, and we lose those strong winds. That's your forecast. Jackie.
Thank you, Judith. And that's Reporting Scotland. We'll have the headlines at 8 and the late bulletin at 10:30. From all the team, for now, good evening.